And Owen, you might respond to this one. In a post-COVID world, like the corporate landscape is likely to change. We're likely to see mergers and acquisitions, companies taking advantage of another company's distress during this time. And are those periods of weakness where some of the things that Pavel was talking about there, where they're more likely to happen, where you've got, for a security professional, overnight their landscape like increases dramatically? Are there points of weakness there where threats like what Pavel is talking about there, where they can happen a bit more easily? And what would you advise a security professional if they were working in that kind of changing corporate landscape? What would their priorities be?
Yeah, it's definitely always an interesting time. I think both COVID and sort of mergers or even divestitures where companies are selling off maybe part of their business, a good incident response team kind of rolls with that pretty easily. I know in the case of our team, when we all pulled out of the offices around the world back in March, there were at least a dozen people who could have come up with that plan, right? It was just sort of, it was just natural for us to sort of figure out a plan on the fly, right down to the details of how many monitors can people take home from the office. Anyone almost in the team could have done it. In terms of sort of that scenario of overnight changes in scope where a team takes on maybe a new business or a new location or whatever, there's definitely sort of a period of vulnerability there. I suppose having gone through it a bunch of times, where I would start usually is trying to figure out the scope, understanding what you've taken on, understanding at a high level, not just the technical details, but things like what teams exist, what are the people dependencies you have, even how do you reach them, right? One of the most useful first week things you can get your hands on is the org chart and the phone list. Not necessarily the systems list, right? If you've got a good map of the people, you can figure out the systems if something were to blow up in week one after, say, an acquisition.
Okay, interesting. Could I ask you, Neil, maybe from your point of view, in the market, say potentially, where are there opportunities and gaps, say for budding entrepreneurs who are looking to see what can't be solved internally? Where is there no product on the market to help like a security team or a response team? Are you seeing any opportunities and gaps out there?
That's the $100 million question. And I'll try to answer that, Elizabeth, but in terms of, and I think everybody has alluded to that this silver bullet here, right? And it's really specific to you and your organization as you as an individual, what's important to you and being able to protect what's important to you. In the recent environment, like the COVID environment, you might see a lot more COVID-style phishing attacks, phishing email attacks coming at you, trying to sell you more medication or impersonation type of attacks, saying that, you're always going to see those types of attacks, but the style and the theme would be different. But I would say, if you were going to look to the future and to bring in academia and research and in hardcore industry, taking into account your acquisitions and mergers, you've really got to understand your weakest point there. That's even though it's very proactive to understand your weakest point. If you're acquiring organizations or new companies that might have a lower threshold in terms of security, or the awareness mightn't be as high as yours, you're still susceptible to that gap in security measures, if you like. Yeah. But I would focus my research and my budget, if I had this, this dreamboat of cash and investment, I would focus on machine learning, and understanding, like Pavel alluded to, falling asleep at the wheel here, right? And focus on in terms of being able to structure data, breaking the data, the whole ocean, the myriad, the global availability of data into categories and entities based on various properties, and structure that data. Being able to structure that data in this madness is really kind of, it's quite liberating, and it's quite you know, and it'll help and facilitate a lot of remediation with incidents that could happen, you know, and even taking that, pushing that boat out further into translating that structure of text into multiple languages, for example, through something like natural language processing. And this then would help you be able to classify events and entities in a meaningful way, you know, and being able to, like, when you talk about the statistical analysis, there's really kind of two levels here, right? There's the correlative analytics that machine learning can help, but also the predictive models. If we can get better at predicting and demystifying and decluttering these events and being able to forecast using highly precise predictive models, that to me would be hugely beneficial, because that would reduce your false positives in that kind of sea of alerts, if you like. And but also, you know, just coming back to the human element, you know, we will, and Liliana alluded to it, we'll never take away the human component, and we rely heavily on that kind of heuristic approach that the human can apply and use during investigations. They can draw on their tribal knowledge of certain ways and rules and investigations and ways and very simple techniques to help with that, especially if you're dealing with a global team of individual of analysts. You need your investigations to be done in a consistent manner around the globe by your various teams of various ethnicities, if you like. So you need a kind of consistent input and you need a consistent output of your investigation. So honest to goodness run books and playbooks that give guidance to the individuals, the humans. It gives them a certain sense of safety as well, where they can apply their knowledge and their investigative techniques in ascertaining certain facts and resolving incidents. So there's a conglomeration of honest to goodness, plain common sense, which are run books, you know, but also there's that kind of the progressive research that maybe machine learning can help. But machine learning, in order for machine learning to be machine learning, you need all of this kind of training, you need this data training, and that costs money and security too, you know, because there's an effort involved and expended in trying to learn your systems and teach your systems how to behave accordingly.
Right.
So, I mean,
yeah, I'd agree strongly. I mean, I think we have so many challenges around this area. It's a very rich seam to be mined for sort of product ideas, research opportunities, that kind of thing. Really every step of the process, every level, you could help reduce manual effort, or you could do sort of shoot for the stars and do full end-to-end automation. And I think we've actually seen some successes in Ireland already, right? This is an area that we would be doubling down on rather than starting from scratch. There's a company in Dublin, Tynes, Owen Hinchley and Tom Kinsella are doing security orchestration and response stuff around incident response. We've seen NetFort in Galway, who were at this for a long number of years, sold to Rapid7 a little while back. We've seen sort of very large fundraisings, even sales of companies in Ireland in this area. And I think there's a lot more to come there potentially.
Liliana, I might just ask you then finally, from your own research perspective.
Actually, I have to be a bit provocative here.
Go on, yeah.
I respectfully disagree.
Great.
In the sense that I think that I understand the importance of machine learning, and this technology has definitely potential. But some of the problems that we faced, for example, with the COVID, were related to the fact that technology and systems were built assuming that users were placed in their workplace to use such system. For example, the NSA reported an increase in the number of cyber attacks, and these attacks were mainly phishing email attempts that were targeting people working from home. And also there was an increase of mitigation blocking of NASA system trying to access malicious sites because their employees were accessing these sites from home. So this tells you a lot enough of the fact that it's important to also identify the context where systems are going to be built. And another important factor is the transparency. So with the COVID, a lot of personal information about test results are going to be used, and there is really not much transparency about which type of this information is going to be used for what purpose. And so I understand that for safety reasons, people are more inclined to say, to share their data. But there is also an issue about what data is necessary, and that there is really necessary to think about transparency, especially for contact tracing app. Which data are really necessary and which are not, for what purpose, and also for how long. Because there is also the risk that these data are going to be kept and used even after the COVID-19 emergency is over. And so all these aspects, I think, need to be taken into account, beside the need to, automate, the need for automation. But there is also a need to think about these requirements from design time when these systems are built. And I felt like these aspects have been kind of neglected, and the emergency, the COVID-19, has kind of make these issues resurface. Thankfully, the technology that we are using, Zoom, is now made an improvement from security perspective, and they are also going to enable end-to-end encryption now. So that's great. At least from this aspect, we are using a secure technology. But I think these are issues that's important to raise, and in relation to the COVID.
No, you raise an interesting point, Liliana, and we don't have anyone from the UCD from the kind of the social sciences or the law point of view, but they've been very active, the academics from that side of the house, during this COVID-19. And yes, as you say, it's important that the contact tracing and all that, but when it moves into the contact tracking, you start worrying about, what data are we giving up and why, and what happens to it when this is all over. And as you say, in an ideal world, we'd be thinking about all of those things as we design the software, and we'd have the time to build it all in. But they're very important questions as we go forward.
I just was also want to add that these aspects are really critical, are becoming increasingly critical for companies. For example, we have been just approved a project with Huawei about security assurances. And so the purpose is to really demonstrate with semi-formal proofs, for example, with using arguments and techniques that are mainly used for safety critical systems, to demonstrate that the systems are secure, transparent, reliable. So to demonstrate by design that these systems are built with these requirements in mind, and they satisfy these requirements. So I think this is definitely something of increasingly practical relevance.